To the West Hartford Board of Education regular meeting on this Tuesday, November the 15th. May we please begin with the roll call, Charlotte?
Dr. Chang?
Here.
Mr. Goldman?
Here.
Dr. Harris?
Here.
Ms. Nazarella?
Present.
Dr. Steinberg?
Here.
Dr. Thomas Farquharson?
Here.
Student Representative Megan Murphy?
Here.
Student Representative Caitlin Striffcave?
Here.
Thank you. And Megan, may you please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. We do have a revision to the agenda order, and that is that the order of the agenda be changed to put the following agenda items before unfinished business, and that is election of officers and board organizations. So seeking a motion to make this revision, please.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Jason. Thank you, Ari. Any discussion? All of those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it. Thank you again for your flexibility. Now, moving on to public communications. This is where we have an opportunity to hear from you, your thoughts, your questions, your concerns. Each individual has 3 minutes. We've modified pieces now, so let me get the revised piece that we now are going by according to our recently passed policy. And so we have up to 10 individuals who are able to speak at the beginning of the meeting, and there are 7 individuals per subject matter. We do have a sign-up sheet, and I did retrieve that, and we had a list that specifically was for those speaking on subject matters and a list for those speaking on non-agenda items. And we are prioritizing those who are speaking on agenda items to go first. If we reach 10 people that are speaking on agenda items, then all of those other individuals who have signed up can speak at the public comment section that we have at the end of the meeting. So starting with the list of agenda items, and I will say, and I thank you so much again for those that have signed up, there were some who signed up on the agenda items that actually fall in the non-agenda items, but you nonetheless will have an opportunity to speak. So for those who signed up referring to agenda items, we'll begin with Addie. And as you approach Addie, and for all of those others speaking, please remember to share your name and your address.
My name is Addie Lorden, 561 Park Road in West Hartford, Connecticut. Obviously, I say that automatically. Charlotte, before you start my clock, I just want to point out that under public communications, it says comments on topics of interest from the public. It has not updated to the new motion, so that might need to be changed. Anyway, we're going to elect new chairpeople, secretary, and it's a tough job in those seats. It's not a comfortable one. You're put under scrutiny, but you're not the only ones. And I quote, "The number of parents and school staff that have confided in Amy and me that find your behavior abrasive and completely unacceptable is quite staggering." This is from an email I received from the WHPS that WHPS was also on, a principal and 2 teachers. I had questioned this man's wife regarding public funds she and the principal had control of. The second man wanted me removed from all volunteer positions, and the third went on to accuse me of wanting to destroy an organization. The first man's wife, 2 years later, emails the Webster Hill principal essentially requesting I be removed from the club I helped with because I spoke out at BOE meetings. The office stopped sending me notices for this after-school group meeting, essentially removing me as requested. However, they also removed my daughter from that program because I was removed from the reminders, denying her this beautiful program. The spouses of 2 of the other gentlemen, and I say it carefully, are gainfully employed in WHPS, in Webster Hill no less. I went to Rosina Haskins, who is head of Equity Diversity Council. She told me that at the very least, the principal should have issued a statement saying WHPS does not condone staff going to parents complaining about parents. She then backtracked, saying it had nothing to do with WHPS. There is no written record. The superintendent's office and the BOE was made aware. We are electing not only BOE members to positions of power, we are also searching for a superintendent. And I would like to point out that, Mr. Vicinis, I would back you as superintendent because you have integrity, you answered my questions, you investigated what I asked you to investigate. And when I don't agree with you, that's just because of what I'm asking. It has nothing to do with you personally. I find you to be a man of integrity, and I thank you very much. However, I think the time has come that we need to search beyond this town, beyond Connecticut, and get an outside superintendent and shake the status quo. Somebody who owes nothing and is owed nothing. Somebody who can come in and look into these issues before we are the next Plymouth or Costco, because believe me, we will not have one problem on the national headlines. We will have them all because they all exist and you all are aware of them. Be careful who you elect. Thank you.
Thank you. And I will share two pieces that I was remiss to share at the beginning. Again, when it comes to public comments, each individual is allowed up to 3 minutes, and Charlotte will share a yellow card when you are down to 1 minute and a red card when your time has expired. I also, too, want to state again with our revised public comment section that we are prioritizing comments first on agenda items. And as it relates to tonight's meeting, the agenda items refer to election of officers, revised policy, second reading, and also Native American history and culture. And so I know that we're still getting adjusted to that piece, but I am going to ask respectfully, please, when you are making comments and you're stating that they are in regard to agenda items, that they do align with that. And so there is another individual here that spoke about agenda items, but these last two are non-agenda items. So any other agenda items that persons would like to comment on? One last time, any other agenda items? Now we'll move to general comments. And first, calling on Anita.
My name is Anita Arakelian, and I live at 48 West Normandy Drive. As you're aware, I've been asking for a probe and inquiry for very important questions. On May 19th at around 12:30 p.m., I entered the office of the superintendent with my child and stated that I wanted to file an official complaint against a principal, the details of which you have already been informed, and it's not proper to stay here. Rather than do a proper inquiry into the matter, Andrew Morrow attempted to dismiss the voice of a child by not recording the words of the child. As Andrew Morrow knows, in front of him I turned the audio recording on my cell because he was not taking notes. Andrew Morrow can claim that records don't exist, but there is an audio recording of Andrew Morrow suggesting to my child to go speak to the psychologist. He said this in front of a parent. Andrew Morrow is not licensed nor credentialed, and I'm going to play a part of it, the healthier part of it.
Ma'am, ma'am, I'm going to ask, excuse me, nope, please, I'm going to ask you to turn that off and continue with your comments without playing the recording, or if you can please just return to your seat.
But is it fair for me to speak without you hearing exactly what transpired? Child tried to get his voice heard. You have 3 people who did not record it. That is not right. Children have a voice. There is the freedom of speech, and it does pertain to children in the schools. I have asked you, and you received it this morning. Will you do a proper inquiry, because the office of the superintendent, Andrew Morrow, didn't. And when he says there aren't records, there actually are. And no record is a record, and he is jeopardizing the district. And some of your mandated reporters, a child's voice was not heard. And I end it with that.
Thank you. Next, we have Ellen Nichols.
Hi, my name is Ellen Nichols, and I live at North Quaker Lane in town. I'm speaking tonight about the opportunity the district has in selecting a new superintendent. The district does many things well, but I feel we have 3 key needs: transparency, responsiveness, and a refocus on academics. Transparency. There are many examples of the district not being transparent, and I will just mention as my own example that we do not want a repeat of the controversial way that the gender curriculum was installed here. Consent was not sought from a broad set of parents and the community at large. And notification was not given to parents prior to the introduction of the gender literacy progression, which was introduced in September 2021. It's only this month that SEL workshops are being held after many community members protested last year. This controversy can be avoided in the future. Second, we're looking for responsiveness. Parents and community speak at this podium with the superintendent in attendance, but little changes. Emails go to administrators, and they are often unanswered. I myself wrote to a member of the administration asking to replace this book from the gender literacy progression on April 27th, followed up on May 4th, and again followed up on May 10th. No acknowledgement of receipt and no response. I then emailed the superintendent on June 2nd about this book. Again, no acknowledgement of receipt of my email and no response. The Board of Ed itself now provides few responses to emails and only occasional acknowledgement. Between the administration and the board, parents and community members feel blocked, unheard, and unappreciated. And this is why trust is missing in the relationship with the district. This can be changed with new leadership. Third, and the very most important, is academic achievement has to be the top priority. The SBAC post-pandemic scores are problematic here as they are in other towns. 66% of students tested met the standard for English language arts, and only 58% of students met or exceeded standard for math. For children on free and reduced lunch, fewer than 40% met standard. Yet, precious minutes, hours, and days are being spent on an enhanced SEL curriculum of identity, activism, and intersectionality. This diverts time from math, reading, and science.
Excuse
we
me,
need
your
to get
time
back
has
to
expired.
basics. We need the balance restored. And a new superintendent will set
Excuse me,
the
your time is
priorities.
up. Thank
Okay.
you.
And tone for the district.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you. Are there any other individuals who would like to make comments? All right, we will pause on public communication. And now we will go to non-staff communications and reports, and this is where we're able to hear from our student representatives. So let's first begin hearing from Caitlin, please.
Hi everyone, good evening. First, I'll start with a little recap on sports since it's the end of the fall season. The boys cross-country team won New England's, which is the first time that has ever happened. They also won states, again, first time that's ever happened. So those are 2 really significant accomplishments, and I'm really proud of our team. Another thing is that the boys took on, I believe, Norwalk today in the semifinals. I'm not sure how that went, but I'm hoping it went well. Girls state swimming is tonight, and I'd also like to acknowledge Megan Tiernan breaking the school's record for breaststroke yet again. She's very accomplished. I'm very impressed. But all of our sports had great seasons. We have the Hall-Conard football game on Saturday, and I'm excited for that. Other than sports, we have our parent conferences on Thursday and Friday, which means a short day for us, which is great. Hall is starting to work on their accreditation process, which is the every 10 years NEASC, like the self-evaluation. So that's beginning processes right now. In honor of Diwali, our Seawalk Club is having a food drive, and also the Kindness Project in West Hartford, in both Hall and Conard and a few other schools, is running a supply drive through the West Hartford Public Libraries, which is going to be linked to the Fern Street Food Ministry, which is very cool. And I'm excited to see how that pans out. We have until December 14th or 16th, I believe. So, finally, we wanted to say that we are excited and sad to see Miss Ambrose go as our interim principal at Braeburn. We wish her the best of luck, and we're sad to see her go.
Thank you, Caitlin. Megan.
Good evening, everyone. So this week is an exciting week at Conard. We have a Spirit Week this entire week leading up to Homecoming on Friday, which will be here at the Town Hall, and that's actually sold out, so it's really great that everyone, there was a high demand to be in attendance. And then we end the week with the Hall Conard football game on Saturday, and as Caitlin said, everyone's very excited for that. The Black Box is going to be holding 10-minute plays. That begins this Wednesday and goes until Saturday, and the Saturday show is already actually sold out. But there is openings in the other shows, so that should be great. 3 student athletes that I want to recognize all belong to the girls' field hockey team, which all 3 of them earned All-State, with Sophia Bavaro and Maddie Campbell earning first-team All-State and Kate Parker earning second-team All-State. All 3 of them are invited to play in a senior All-State game, and they will be honored at the 40th Annual Connecticut High School Coaches Association Field Hockey All-State Banquet, which will be December 6th at the AquaTurf Club. So huge congratulations to them. One more student athlete that I want to recognize is actually outside of high school sports. A freshman, Lucas Price Glenn, placed second out of 148 cyclists in the 2022 U.S. Series of Cyclocross Category 3 division. And so starting in September, he competed against really advanced cyclists of all ages in places such as Rochester, Baltimore, Massachusetts, all over. And he, after reaching this accomplishment, will continue to train for the United States Cycling National Championships, which will be held here in Hartford in December. So very exciting, but yeah, super exciting week at Conard with Spirit Week leading up to this fun weekend. So yeah.
Thank you, Megan. My, Hall and Conard, you all are doing your thing. Thank you so much for those great updates. Now we will move to election of officers. And the background for this is something that we do every time at this time of the year, and pursuant to Section 10-218 of the State Statutes, Chapter 2, Section 4 of the Town Charter, and Section 8130 of the West Hartford School Code Policy. The Board of Education should at this meeting elect a chair, vice chair, secretary, and 2 financial examiners, such persons to hold office for a period of 1 year. It is recommended that the election be conducted in accordance with the following procedures. So, with that, I move that Dr. Andrew Murrow act as temporary chairperson of this meeting for the purpose of electing a chairperson for the Board of Education. And so with that, seeking a motion, pardon.
So moved?
Is there a second?
I second.
All right, any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. The ayes have it. Passing it to you.
All right, here we go. So nominations are now in order for the office of Chairperson of the Board of Education. Do I hear any nominations?
I would like to nominate Lorna Thomas Farquharson.
Dr. Thomas Farquharson is nominated. Are there any other nominations for the office of Chairperson? The nominations are closed. I would ask for a vote. Those in favor of Dr. Lorna Thomas Farquharson for chairperson, say aye. Opposed, say nay.
Aye.
Aye.
The ayes have it. And I will now turn it back over to the newly elected chairperson of the Board of Education. Congratulations, Madam Chairperson.
Thank you so very much. And teammates, thank you so very much. All right, and it is an honor. And so continuing on, now seeking a motion for someone to nominate, that is someone, for the position of vice chair. Is there a nomination?
I'd like to make a nomination for Ari Steinberg.
All right.
And I second that nomination.
All right, great. We have Dr. Ari Steinberg, who is nominated for the position of vice chair. It has been seconded. Is there any discussion before we move to a vote? All of those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it. Congratulations, Dr. Steinberg.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Now moving on, seeking a motion for the position of Secretary of the Board of Education. Is there a nomination, that is? Is there a nomination?
Yes, I nominate Jason Chang.
Thank you. Is there a second to that nomination?
Second.
Thank you. We have Dr. Jason Chang nominated as for the position of Secretary of the Board of Education. Before we take a vote, any discussion? All of those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it. Congratulations, Dr. Chang. Now moving on to the position of Secretary, seeking a nomination for the position of Secretary.
We just
We did
decided.
it.
We did do that. Pardon me. We are moving on to the position of Financial Examiner. And we do have two positions that sit as a Financial Examiner, one from each party, one from the Democratic side and one from the Republican side. So we'll begin with the Democratic side. And in seeking a nomination for the position of Financial Examiner, I would like to nominate Claire Nessarella Taylor. Is there a second?
Seconded.
Thank you. Any discussion? Again, we're recommending Claire for the position of Financial Examiner, and we'll proceed to a vote. All of those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it. Congratulations, Claire. And now we are seeking a nomination for Financial Examiner for the Republican side, and I would like to move ahead and nominate Mr. Ethan Goldman. Is there a second?
Second.
Before we move to a vote, any discussion? All of those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it. Congratulations, Ethan. So we now have our new slate, and with that, we're going to do a little musical chairs for a moment so we can recognize. Again, typically the vice chair sits to the right of the chair, and the secretary sits to the left of the chair. So please bear with us as we do a little moving around. All right. Thank you so much for your patience. We will now continue. And moving on to unfinished business. And we have a motion by Dr. Lorna Thomas Farquharson, Dr. Gail Harris, and Dr. Jason Chang to accept revised policies as a second reading. So as we know, last week we had a first reading of several policies, and we certainly thank Ms. Ann McKernan for assisting us in this process. And with our policy subcommittee, which is made up of Gail and Jason and myself, we presented as a first reading several policies to you, which include, this was at the last meeting, which include Policy 5521 on drug and alcohol use by students, Policy 5310, student attendance, truancy, and chronic absenteeism, 5610, administration of medication in the schools, 5680, child sexual abuse and assault response policy and reporting procedures, as well as personnel series for Policy 4011, prohibition of sex discrimination and sexual harassment in the workplace, and 4250, prohibition on the recommendation for psychotropic drugs. And so as we know, teammates, these policies are ones that are state and federally mandated, which essentially means these are ones that, in order for us to be compliant with the law, it is encouraged for us to comply with the policies as is. However, we certainly know that we want to respect the process and vote on them nonetheless. So, starting with policy, well, we had a motion the first time, and so the motion is still on the floor, and a second from our last meeting together. So we still are in the midst of discussion. And so before we proceed to a vote on these individual policies, are there any thoughts or comments that would like to be shared?
I had a question, and it may have come up before, but in page 11, 5610, 5610, sorry. Guardian, it says means the one who has authority, obligation, and guardianship of a person or minor, of a minor. I'm assuming it's unique to that individual. It's not, it just,
You restate your question.
yeah, this is all new to me. So my assumption is when it's a guardian, that guardian is unique to that child.
Yes, that's
Yes.
correct.
Okay, because it
What-
doesn't say that.
Well, it doesn't, because on page 11, what it's doing is it's listing just the definitions.
That's why I would have thought it'd be there, but, okay, I just.
No, but they're listing the general definitions,
Yeah.
and so that would be what the legal definition of guardianship for this policy would be.
That's what I
yes.
assumed. I just
Yep.
wanted to clarify.
Yep.
Thank you.
Any other thoughts or comments regarding the policies here? And again, we'll go through each one individually to vote on them, but do want to, yes. Gail?
Thanks. I had read through all of these policies, and I read through them very carefully, as Ann knows, because I asked a lot of questions. Policy 5610, right, which is the administration of medications in the schools. I have tremendous difficulty with this policy. I alluded to it at the last meeting, but basically, the policy allows a parent or a guardian to opt out of essentially life-saving medication in an acute situation. And I would have a lot of trouble, I think, as a healthcare provider, being able to support a policy that's going to allow us to opt out of a situation in an acute situation where a child would need medical care, but there has been somebody who has decided that that medical care cannot be administered. So I am going to vote against that policy, and I did want all of you to understand why. It just seems to me, I do understand, state statute and all of that, but it just seems to me that this is very detrimental to a student who needs help and can't get it. And then what I was understanding, I believe from Ann, is that we would not administer the medication. So if somebody was having an anaphylactic shock, but somebody allowed them, had opted out for that student that they could not get like an EpiPen, we wouldn't be able to administer that, but then we would call in 911, who would then come and administer that medication. So that seems to me problematic. So I just wanted to state when I vote against it what my reasoning and thought process was. Thanks.
Yes, Claire?
So, is it common to opt out?
No,
I mean, are we talking 50 or 2?
I don't know of one.
Okay.
I'm not aware of any parent that's opted out of any emergency treatments.
So I just want to say one thing. I understand that there may be very few parents who do that, or maybe no parents, but in any case, I think if there's a child that is in that situation, that would be a very disastrous situation.
Yeah, we recognize your position. It's the statute, and so that's the policy presented. Although I recognize what you're saying, and the good news is there's no one to our knowledge, and there is other courses of action.
And Gail, I will say I respect you for speaking in this way and sharing your thoughts and maintaining integrity with you and your profession. Certainly with you being a medical provider, physician, you take an oath to do no harm. So I could see how there can be a conflict of why there is that conflict there. So respect where you're coming from and encourage that when there are moments where policies are, where there's not a full alignment of that we certainly don't want our voice to end with the vote at that time. We certainly want to take it to where it can have some impact. But appreciate you sharing your thoughts and respect where your thoughts are coming from. Any other discussion on any of these policies? And if not, we'll just go through each one. Yes, Ethan.
I'd just like to follow up on Gail's comment, and I know less than anybody on this. Is the policy, this policy change, I assume that is an existing policy just rewritten to clarify, or it's not making a change from not allowing opt-out to allowing opt-out?
Correct. It's not, that is not the change. It's just been updated since we adopted these policies in 2020, and there's been some updates since, and with COVID, we hadn't been able to do that, so we'd like to bring ourselves up to
And I
speed.
realize this comes from the law firm, but is there a reason why parents are allowed to opt out?
It's
I mean,
state
usually I'm
statute.
for parents deciding,
Well-
but I understand what Gail's saying.
Well, we're advised by our lawyers, but they study the state statute and help us write the policy that aligns to that statute. So it's not really from the, it's not that they're making the content of this. They're
Okay.
aligning the content
And
of
then
this
a
with what
final
the statute says.
So if we vote no on the policy, what then happens?
Well, I have to,
Yeah, you're then out of compliance with the state statute. I mean, the policy is stated, and the policy hasn't changed significantly. This is just wording changes in essence since
That's what I assumed,
2020.
yeah.
But the policy has always had exemptions for parents, again, parental choice, based on certain religious feelings and so forth as far as medication. What it doesn't say is that we're going to allow someone to have a serious medical crisis while we're all standing around
Right.
waiting for 911. I mean, there's certainly always going to be, if someone's life is on the line, our staff intervene. Regardless of, 911 is on the way and such, but if they're not going to be here, and again, Ethan, I can't give you a definite, black and white answer on this, but I can tell you that is that, we have to have these policies because we have to follow the state statute on this. And, I understand why parents have the option of opting out of medication. I personally would agree with you, and I think I would agree with Gail, that life-preserving medication doesn't get an opt-out. And so we're following the law
Yeah.
on this and giving people the option of that.
I just concerned for the teacher or administrator who's doing something that they're against the policy to,
Yeah.
I don't know, it just, and usually, like I said, I think the parents should have control with, this is what I'm struggling with. Thank you.
Gail.
Yeah, Andy, if I could just clarify, so if we were in a situation with a life-threatening situation, theoretically a parent had opted out of an EpiPen, and you had just said that your staff would be, but if the parent opts out of the EpiPen, I mean, you're not giving the EpiPen, you're maybe providing other types of support.
No, I can, and again, we're down a rabbit hole of what ifs and
Right.
different scenarios, but an opt-out on such a situation like an EpiPen or something like that doesn't exclude the fact that our staff still have access to those. And our nurses, our athletic trainers and such, all carry them with them. They're in field trip bags and so forth. If a child is having a reaction and there is an opt-out on that the nurse is aware of and so forth, the first call then would be to 911 and the medical providers. What I'm simply saying is that if it looked like the situation was headed downhill, I don't know any of our nursing staff and so forth that would just stand by in that case.
So they would give the, I'm sorry, they would give the EpiPen?
I believe so. Again, it's a hypothetical, but in my experience, I would if I was a principal and I had a situation like that I knew that the student was not going to be reached in time by 911. Of course, I would. I also have one, so I'm good.
Claire, yes.
But, so I take a group on a field trip. I don't have a nurse. I have the medication for the kids in my class that I'm taking on the field trip. If a kid does have an emergency with a bee sting, I'm told to give the EpiPen.
Correct.
I don't have data on all the opt-outs.
Correct.
So how does one, as a teacher, be in compliance with this law if we don't have a list of all the opt-outs. And
That's the point. Okay, I'm sorry. I believe that's one of the points is we don't know of any opt-outs. And that's probably why you don't have a list.
Well, then you don't work for our
You don't work
schools.
for us, but.
But aside
You
from
work for
that,
us.
I'm sure your organization would give you a list as well if they had any opt-outs.
Yeah, if they had one, they'd probably
Yeah.
give you a list, but
Okay.
that's how rare an
Yeah.
opt-out is, because
Yeah.
people want these protections. It's just,
Yeah.
in the law, there is this option, and it only applies to two things, EpiPen and Narcan.
Any other thoughts or comments? I think what is certainly I'm taking as a shared thought that we all have is prioritizing the safety and wellness of all of our students and young people. And so that is not minimized by how we proceed in upholding these policies, but nonetheless certainly want to continue to ensure the safetiness of our young people and also continue to advocate where needed, as I wink at you, Gail. To advocate, yes. Any other thoughts or comments before we proceed to voting on each proposed policy? Yes, Ethan.
So are we going to vote?
Will you put your mic on so they can hear it?
Is the vote going to be on each policy, or can we do 5610 separately?
Well, that's what we're going to do. We're going to go through, we're going to go
Okay, I
through each
didn't
one
remember, okay.
separately, yes.
It's been a long week.
That's all right, you've been abroad, yes. Okay, well, let us proceed, starting with Policy 5521, Drug and Alcohol Use by Students. Again, these are all already on the floor as a motion that has been motioned and seconded in. So we've had lots of discussion. We'll proceed to the vote. All of those in favor, 5521, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it. Moving on to 5310, Student Attendance, Truancy, and Chronic Absenteeism. All of those in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it. Moving on to 5610, Administration of Medication in the Schools. All of those in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed?
Opposed?
All right, the ayes have it.
One abstention.
With, the ayes have it means it passes, it carries through. But yes, there is one nay, correct. Oh, you're abstaining? Okay, well, let's do this once again to be clear. So in regard to Policy 5610, Administration of Medication in Schools, all of those in favor say aye. Aye. Okay, we have four that are an aye. Any opposed?
Opposed?
One opposing, and any abstention?
Abstention.
Okay, one abstention. Thank you. Moving on to 5680, Child Sexual Abuse and Assault Response Policy and Reporting Procedures. All of those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? The ayes have it. Moving on to 4011, Prohibition of Sex Discrimination and Sexual Harassment in the Workplace. All of those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? The ayes have it. And lastly, Policy 4250, Prohibition on the Recommendation of Psychotropic Drugs. All of those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, the ayes have it. So collectively, these policies have passed. Thank you all so very much. But importantly, thank you for the robust discussion and the attentiveness in these policies. We know as board members that is one of our primary roles, to pass policy. And so it is important that we follow due diligence in going through the process. So thank you all very much for that. And we will be coming back at a later time for more.
We'll be back.
Yes, all right. Not tonight, but another time, yes. Moving on to new business, which we do not have any of. So now we'll move on to staff communications and reports, and we'll hear from our superintendent.
All right. As you know, and I think was in the paper since last time, I want to pass along our congratulations to Jeff Sousa, who is Brayburn's principal, who will be heading off to New Hartford as the New Hartford school superintendent. 432 kids, I believe he said, in New Hartford, so he's really looking forward to that. I had lunch with him last week, and he's very excited about this next step. And Jeff's someone who's been with us in the district now for over a decade at Sedgwick and at Brayburn, and I'm sure he'll do a great job. there. I also want to congratulate, as Caitlin had said, that Kim Ambrose is going to be headed over to to Braeburn as the interim principal for the remainder of the school year. And she's also very excited. They're very excited to have her. I believe that today or tomorrow, as part of the conferences, they were having some parent meet and greets and a chance for her to really get a chance to really meet and experience all that community has to offer this week, which we're very excited about for her. I was in D.C. last week with Karen Cookish and Susie Sinatro. We were accepting the Blue Ribbon Award for Whiting Lane. It was a very nice ceremony, and Karen has not only the plaque, the very impressive plaque that came with that, but also the Blue Ribbon flag that the school now gets the privilege of flying, as well as the banners. And so you'll be seeing that shortly. Tomorrow night is the 2022 Teacher of the Year Award ceremony at the Bushnell. And so I'll be there with Michelle Haggerty, who, as you remember, is the Smith, our teacher from Smith School, who is the West Hartford Teacher of the Year for 2022. UConn and some visitors from the Netherlands were here in October to visit our Quest classrooms. Hall High School AP student Maya Miller is one of 60 students in the state selected for ASAP's 12th annual celebration of young photographers. The Hall Encountered Equity Squad students were hosted in Town Hall in late October to learn about leadership and community efforts to promote equity and the celebration of diversity. Some highlights, as you know, from the election day last week, we held full-day professional development for our teachers, focused around curriculum, content area standards, instruction, culturally responsive practices, the science of reading, child protection measures, and the new IEP procedures. A special thank you to all of the parents, staff, veterans, especially our own Paul Vazinis, who, as the schools hosted special programming and assemblies to honor veterans within our school communities and provide instructions on the meaning of Veterans Day. And last but certainly not least, Friday, December 23rd, we'll be sending this out to parents as well. We will have a Wednesday release schedule, as that is the Friday right before break. And that's all I have for today.
Thank you very much. Teammates, any questions for Dr. Murrow? All right, well, thank you. Now, moving on to staff reports and board discussions, and we will now receive Native American History and Culture update, and we'll welcome to the table Mr. Paul Vazinis, Mrs. Ashley Callan, Dr. Michelle Graveline, and Ms. Nicole Richmond, who will provide a report to us. Welcome and thank you.
Thank you very much, and allow me a moment to get plugged in. So it is my pleasure to be able to present here. We'll see if this is going to cooperate. Seeing that. Hang on one second, I'm sorry.
That's all right. You hear the humming. It's just helping us to get grounded and ready to absorb and what you're going to share with us all.
Can you check if it's on?
Something flickered there.
Yep.
There we go.
Back to work.
Is it on, Charlotte, is it on a mute, or is there any setting that's? Let me take a look.
Well, you know, as we are provided this opportunity to practice patience here, this is great for our young people to be reminded of that. And, you know, the past 2 years, we have been very dependent on modern technology and virtual means of connecting. And, you know, I think every now and then computers have a right to be defiant. And so that's all right. We're experiencing that. And we'll,
Artificial intelligence already?
hey, something, you know, but it has a right. And we'll just,
It's, no, it appears to be a problem at the console.
okay.
The control is just. With your permission, I guess we'll go without the visuals.
That is all right. That allows us to focus more on what you're sharing.
Excellent. Yeah. Well, it is a pleasure to be able to present to you, and I'm joined, you know, Dr. Graveline from previous presentations, but it's an honor for me to introduce, for those that don't know her, Ashley Callan. She is our pre-K 5 curriculum specialist townwide for English language arts and social studies. She has been very active in terms of her collaboration within the community, as you read about in the report. And to my right is Nicole Richmond, who is one of our newest additions to our administrative team. She's joining us as a secondary social studies department supervisor, and she works between King Philip and Hall High School. So I am very pleased to welcome them both and share some airtime with them. But we're timing this presentation this month specifically because it is Native American Heritage Month. And I recognize that there has been a lot of renewed interest here in our community about what our curriculum states about and does in terms of the treatment of Native Americans in terms of both history and culture. There is actually, as you read, a new public law, Public Act 21-2, that indicates for the school year commencing July 1st, 2023, which is to say next school year, and for each school year thereafter, each Board of Education must include Native American Studies as part of their social studies curriculum for the district. And I'm pleased to share with you this report during Native American Heritage Month that really indicates and serves to demonstrate our longstanding treatment and of Native American culture and history within our curriculum, and what I hope that you find are very authentic, very meaningful, very intentional ways. I don't know, you know, it was very clear that there is interest in this within our public, and that our public is not necessarily, we haven't done a great job communicating and highlighting that, and so as we observed that, we thought this would be the appropriate time. And just to give just a very quick background to the history of Native American Heritage Month, it dates back to 1990. It was enacted as a month of celebration of Native American heritage and culture by President George H. Bush, but it really traces its roots back much longer than that, over 100 years ago in 1916, when New York set aside the second Saturday in May as a day to celebrate the contributions of Native Americans. That day was eventually elevated to a month, and the lobbying efforts for that to happen are thanks to members of the Seneca, Arapaho, and Blackfoot tribes during that time period. So I thought that was just good context to sort of begin, and what we'd like to do is walk you through the history and the activities in our elementary curriculum, and how that develops at our secondary curriculum, where topics can be explored to a different level of depth based on the complexity of these issues and in our own history. So with that, I'm gonna turn it over to Ashley to begin, and then back to Nicole to close.
Hello. So in 2015, we received the new social studies standards for the state of Connecticut. They were published, and when they were, it gave us a really great opportunity to be able to look at our curriculum and start making revisions to that curriculum. And one of the things that we did as part of that process is we started to meet as a pre-K through 12 vertical team. And during that time, we were working on developing some guiding beliefs, and one of the really important things or beliefs that we decided that we really wanted to highlight as part of our curriculum is making sure that we had multiple perspectives represented in our curriculum. So as we started to think about the revisions that we wanted to make, one example I wanted to talk about today is in our grade 4 curriculum. Our students study Connecticut and local history. So they do a really deep dive into West Hartford history, and they also do a deep dive into Connecticut history. And one thing that you'll always hear me talk about is that in elementary school, there's often not a lot of really great books written for our elementary students that are that have a lot of substance and depth to them. So as we were starting to look for some social studies texts that were around Connecticut's history, they all tended to focus on state symbols. So very surface level. We wanted to make sure that students had something that had a lot more rigor in it. Myself and another curriculum specialist from a different town in Simsbury worked together to create this book. We were able to work with Elizabeth Norman, who at the time was the publisher of Connecticut Explored magazine, and we were able to create a text that really was much more appropriate for our students, much more rigorous, and went into the economics, history, geography of our state. And as part of that work, as we were starting to write, we realized that we wanted to make sure that a part of this book included Connecticut's first people. That was something that was really important to us, but we also knew that we wanted to make sure that the information that was included in this book was relevant and accurate. So we were able to create a partnership with Chris Newell, who at the time was the education supervisor for the Mashantucket Pequot Museum. And he was able to write this chapter for us, which we're really excited to have that partnership with him. And it really brought an authentic voice to the text. Now, one thing that we do as part of that unit is we really study Connecticut in general, but then students are given some choice to be able to choose a person, a place, or an event in Connecticut's history and study that in depth. And they get to do some research, and the kids are really excited about being able to have some choice around that. So we wanted to make sure, again, that we had some options for students, and two people that students have the option to be able to study if they're interested are Fidelia Flying Bird Fielding, who is a less known speaker of the traditional Mohegan Pequot language. And then they also have the ability to be able to research more in depth Gladys Tantaquejan, who is a Mohegan, who was a Mohegan medicine woman. So as part of this unit, students do have this really great opportunity to learn more specifically about our local tribes, which was really exciting for us. So that's in our grade 4 curriculum. As part of our grade 3 curriculum, we were also able to create another partnership. In grade 3, in each of our grade levels, we focus on some kind of folk tales or fairy tales. In grade 2, we study fairy tales and fables. In grade 4, we study mythology. And in grade 3, we had been studying folk tales, but we made some revisions to our unit several years ago to really focus exclusively on Native American folk tales. And it's the unit that we focus on retelling, so students are really involved in the process of being able to engage in that oral tradition and that oral storytelling and use those skills and apply it towards a language arts concept. So we reached out to the Mohegan tribe, and we were able to develop a partnership with Beth Regan. Her name is Morning Deer. She's currently the vice chairwoman and the justice of the Mohegan tribe. And she came in to speak with a group of teachers, myself, and her stories were absolutely incredible. We were really just so moved by the stories that she told us, some of their traditional stories. And we asked her if she would be willing to videotape one of those stories for us so that we can include it into our curriculum. And she had to go back to the tribal elders to be able to ask for permission. Typically, stories are passed down in an oral tradition. They're not usually written down, and they're not always videotaped. So it was really an honor when she contacted us and said that she would videotape it for us, and now it is part of our curriculum where every student is able to watch that video and really engages in an opportunity to think about why was the story so engaging? What did she do to really draw you into the story? And then the students are able to retell the story on their own. Now, as part of that unit, not only do the students listen to these oral stories, but they're also given the opportunity to read some folk tales on their own, and then they engage in a retelling of those stories and written retells of those stories. And part of the problem, again, go back to the publishers, there's not always a lot of really great books that are out there for our students. And we really were struggling with finding Native American folktales, again, that were written at a level that was appropriate for our third graders, but also that was culturally relevant and authentic. We really wanted to make sure that the authors of these books were Native people themselves. So we were able to find a couple of them. We were able to find some traditional ones like Joseph Bruchac. His books were excellent. But we had to take a couple out of our library because we just didn't really, we didn't think they were the most culturally appropriate anymore. And we just didn't want to include those. So we ended up working with some Canadian publishers who were excellent, and they had Native people as their authors. So we were really able to put together a nice collection of books that are leveled, so every child is able to read several books at their reading level, and then again retell those Native American folktales. So that's our grade 3 curriculum. Lastly, I'm going to give you just an example of some of the work that we've been doing in our grade 5 curriculum. Grade 5 is really the first year that we're focusing in as almost like a course, a U.S. history course. If you think there's 3 U.S. history courses in 5th and 8th and in 10th, it's really the first opportunity that students have to think about U.S. history in a way that we don't do in kindergarten through grade 4. And we focus pretty much exclusively on colonization. Again, going back to that idea of wanting to make sure that we include multiple perspectives and we're representing many voices. We wanted to make sure that in that curriculum, we weren't just highlighting the Europeans that were coming to this country and exploring and then settling in this country, but we also wanted to make sure that we were honoring the Native people that were already living here. So we renamed our unit. We call it Early Encounters. And in that unit, we do share with the students who the early explorers were, but we also share with them the people who they encountered when they came to the Americas. We tell their story. We tell about what the history was like pre-encounter. We talk about the effects of that encounter, and then we talk about those tribes in the present day also. We, in some cases, some of the tribes that we expose the students to are culturally extinct, whereas others are tribes that you would recognize today. The one thing, again, is that there was no text available for something like this. So again, we had to be able to write it. And we had a curriculum team that came together and worked to create this resource. Again, making sure that it was leveled and that students at many different grade levels would be able to access that text.
Thank you. Good. Okay, so Ashley mentioned the standards that were released in 2015. Social studies will actually be getting another set of new standards shortly. They are in draft mode right now and going to committee for some refinement. And so what they have in place, though, are guiding principles for the standards. And I think that similar to what Ashley said about those standards creating great opportunity to infuse more diverse perspectives in the curriculum, these standards will as well. I'll read quickly just from some of the guiding principles that were released about the drafting of those standards. Principle 4 that the standards will represent a comprehensive and inclusive coverage of events, issues, and contexts. 5, standards use an intersectional lens when referencing people, groups, and communities. And then 6, that standards are responsive to the cultural and linguistic diversity in Connecticut schools and communities. So we see a great opportunity here for when these standards are released to inform our work really of how we're bringing this act to life. I certainly think, especially listening to Ashley, I'm a little bit new here, as Paul said, and so it's great for me to hear an elementary perspective, which I haven't gotten as much of yet. But it certainly seems, and I'll share a little bit from the high school and the middle schools, that by the letter of the law, we're certainly doing a great job, I would say. And so I hope that these standards give us more opportunity to bring the spirit of the law alive as well. So, as Ashley said, in grades 8 and 10, students again have U.S. history courses. In grade 8, the first unit is about thinking like a historian. And so really about perspective taking, source analysis, and understanding the nuances that both of those skills really require of students. And 2 summative assessments in that unit focus around Native American perspectives. So the first is on the true story of Pocahontas. It's actually a lesson out of the Stanford History Education Group from Sam Weinberg. And the question that students explore through a series of source analysis is, did Pocahontas save John Smith's life? And so they start, I think, with the clip from Pocahontas and then explore if the depiction in Disney is really accurate, and then what does it tell us about the memory, historical memory. They also write an argument essay, it's their first of the year, exploring the question, how important is it that we remember Christopher Columbus? One of the sources that they have, I think there's about 6 sources in the document packet that students use to answer that question. One of them comes right here from West Hartford. It's a Hartford Current article, West Hartford changes Columbus Day to Indigenous Peoples Day. So students pull text from that particular article to support their response to that argument question as well. That's one example in 8th grade. In 10th grade, we have a relatively new revised unit on westward expansion. Again, starting that unit with a focus on Native and Indigenous perspectives. The content of that unit really focuses on the impact of settlement on American Indians through both the reservation system and the Carlisle Indian Schools. The Carlisle Indian School is a school in Pennsylvania which served as a model for Indian boarding schools. I think about 26 of them were built on that model around the nation. The unit also focuses on portrayals of traditional West and the New West in the media. And so students do a bit of work looking at Western style films and texts and really understanding how the development and the combating of stereotypes is really important to understanding those perceptions of the Native population. A major assessment of that unit is another argument writing piece where students answer the question, what responsibility does the United States have to address Native American mascots in sports organizations and other institutions? So of course, a little nod to the work that's been done here in West Hartford to craft more inclusive school mascots, but also a question that's continuing to be bat around in venues outside of West Hartford as well. Students also get an opportunity in 10th grade to look at how Native American women specifically have contributed to the suffrage movement and concerns afterwards about fears that they would be left behind perhaps for lack of citizenship. And so that's an opportunity that students can opt into for a self-directed inquiry in their suffrage unit in 10th grade as well later in that year. I do want to also highlight some of the work that students have done and contributed to our community lessons. So Chris Islab, teacher at Conard High School, had students actually as part of a unit craft a land acknowledgement. And so the class collaborated did a lot of research and developed a shared land acknowledgement from their class, which actually is being used in our community lesson tomorrow at both Hall and Conard High School as we continue to explore Native American Heritage Month together in that setting.
And so that is a brief summary, and I thank both Ashley and Nicole. As you can tell, they're extremely well-versed and phenomenal resources, but what I hope comes through within the report is really the effort that has been ongoing since as early as 2015, as was mentioned, to review and revise our curriculum with thoughtful approaches to how we treat the history and culture of Native Americans. That was a charge from this board. That was something that we have undertaken in earnest and really made connections and genuine partnerships with local tribes here in Connecticut in order to benefit our students' understanding and perspectives. So with that, I'll open it up to any discussion and questions for the team.
Excuse me, thank you. Teammates, questions, comments? Yes, Claire.
I'm very excited about this curriculum. When I joined the board, there was a lot of mail about Native Americans and the issues and what we taught, and it was great to meet with you privately and go through the curriculum. I'm very impressed with the work that you did on the state book. I taught 5th grade for 13 years, and we only focused on the explorers, and I would have loved to have had the Native Americans that were impacted by the explorers and to have had that. I think this is very engaging. It's about real things that the kids might see in Disney movies. It's taking tall tales in the folk tale unit that I taught in 3rd and making it about real people from our state. So great stuff. We're ahead of the curve as far as the mandates coming down from the state. So the work that was started in 2015, we have 7 years of this work. And there might be some catch up with what they expect, but not nearly what some other towns might have to deal with. So thank you for the presentation. Great engaging stuff. It's also leveled, it's integrated. Teachers get a lot of things added to their plate, and when it's integrated with language arts, it's part of the whole teaching social studies and language arts together. So thank you for your presentation.
Other questions or comments?
Sure.
Jason.
Hi. Thank you so much for this presentation, the work that's gone into this, the consultation with communities. I think is such an important methodology that you guys have used, and the enduring kind of relationship with communities, I think is not only beneficial to students to have that, to see that kind of connection, but that it is a part of partnering with all different kinds of communities in Connecticut, and so I really value that intentional method of building this. And so I had one question about the land acknowledgement. When there was the district had developed the land acknowledgement statement earlier, previous years, but then there's another one developed in the schools through inquiry with students, and I think that's wonderful. And wondered if there was other plans for using the land acknowledgement within the district or within the schools as it pertains to learning about those kinds of local connections, and allowing for us to constantly be reminded of those lessons that they're learning in 3rd, 4th, 5th, 8th grade, that it's a constant reminder of the value of those lessons.
Can I ask a follow-up question? So is it more about the way we're utilizing a land acknowledgement systemically, or continued opportunities for students to develop land acknowledgements as part of curriculum?
Yeah, thank you for the clarification. Yeah, it's the first part. How do we plan to use them, and what sort of learning outcomes or lessons is that connected to?
Sure. So I'll share, and I'm not intimately familiar with the content of the community lesson, but just for the community lesson that Nicole is describing, it's like an advisory, a homeroom period at the high school level. So it's an assured learning experience for all of our students in grades 9 through 12 during this month, strategically chosen, obviously, for Native American Heritage Month, for them to have an understanding and appreciation of land acknowledgement. But I won't say that, and I do remember the town coming out with its own land acknowledgement several years back, as I recall. Not something that's in use, say, at the elementary level, but I know, Ashley, you had shared that the concept of a land acknowledgement, the notion that when we're studying, even within 5th grade, our Native American peoples, the concept and even the subtlety of the change in language from early explorers, those who discovered a land, versus early encounters, there is acknowledgement that's taught that that we're all people that are here living on this space today, and there were those that came before us, and certainly those that will come after us, type thing, without necessarily the ceremony or the that's put into a formal land acknowledgement. So the concept of none of us here are necessarily first peoples. There are always peoples that came before us, is something that is taught at the elementary, but I'd be interested to go back and even compare what's been created to what the town had drafted. So I'll put that down as a follow-up for myself.
And just at the elementary level too, we always think that it's really important to ground the work that we do in anything that we can that's hyper-local, right? So, we introduced the students to the idea that the Siakag were here in, prior to European settlement. So that is, again, something that, we make sure that we include in our curriculum to ensure that there's some grounding for students at that, very basic elementary level too.
Yeah, thank you. I asked because then, in some respects, sometimes the land acknowledgement can be used sort of performatively without kind of a connection to a lesson, or without a connection to those deeper histories. But that the reminder serves as an anchor to link those. So I appreciate the thoughtfulness in thinking about how it's embedded. And not to kind of overuse, and the sort of ceremonial dimension of the statement, but that the lesson is pervasive through other work. So thank you for that.
You were first.
Ethan, you go ahead, and then Ari. Thank you.
I tried reading through the documents and read the 4th grade one, or tried to. It's 90 pages, and it's hard to do through a computer, particularly because it seems like everybody wants me to wear glasses, so I was trying to raise the space. And the Native American part was good. The economic part was good. I was very disappointed, though. To me, when I think colonial history, and maybe I'll ask you guys the question, and this is outside the Native American, but it is a history of Connecticut. I think of religious freedom. I didn't see anything in the book about that. I mean, to me personally, my grandparents came for religious freedom, and that wasn't mentioned. And I was wondering if I could get a copy, because it may have been there, and I just missed it trying to go from page to page on the computer. So
I can speak to that. So as part of our curriculum in 4th grade, we end up studying Connecticut and local history. So this comes as part of the Connecticut history piece of that. Once they move into 5th grade, they're studying colonization. They start with the Early Encounters book, and that's one of our units where we really talk about the interactions between the European explorers and the native people. But then we move into an entire unit that's totally separate from all of this, that builds on that foundational learning, and really goes into colonization. At that point, that's where we talk about, we talk about settlement, we talk about religion. I mean, we have a whole lesson on religion and how
the Thomas Hooker part where they escaped from Massachusetts.
Yes.
For the religious freedom.
Yep. So we actually have one entire lesson set that is just focused on. It's actually part of our religion curriculum, and it goes into how each of the 13 colonies were formed based on religious beliefs. So that you're not seeing it in here just because it's a different unit.
Okay.
Yeah, it's not part of the intersection with the Native American part, so that's the only reason why.
It's a book about Connecticut, and my memory of the history is Connecticut was formed by people in Massachusetts trying to get to religious freedom.
So exactly, and the book on Connecticut, because that's grade 4, is actually written in to specific geography standards and it's all so. You're capturing the whole point that the study of social studies, and I know Nicole and Ashley can do this much better than me in terms of the themes that are undertaken because it's multifaceted, and each of those is addressed at different points in different grade levels in different units. So it's just what we were choosing to highlight tonight.
Yeah.
But
no, it was just. I mean, there was another section in there that described, you read it without knowing, Connecticut almost as a border state, saying there was indecision, and I'm paraphrasing, relative to the Civil War. That doesn't jive with anything I know from a historical perspective. Yeah, I don't know. So the Native American part I like, and that's what you're here for. But it just was very frustrating. And again, I tried reading the others, but it's tough moving from trying to get better sight onto it. So, and I could have missed it. So, if possible, I'd like to see the book.
Yeah, absolutely. I can even leave this copy for you.
Okay. Well, I don't want to take your copy, but.
Oh, no, that's okay. I have additional ones upstairs. But the other thing to keep in mind is the social studies frameworks, when they were published, were really just guidelines for us. And we made a conscious decision to flip-flop the grade 3 and grade 4 curriculum because we felt like studying Connecticut and local history, which was recommended for grade 3, was much more relevant in grade 5 because we could use primary source documents as part of that study. We thought that was very important, but that standard and the language arts standards don't come until grade 4. Okay. So this book was actually written, it's in over half of our districts in the state now. It was originally a pilot program. It was offered for free through a grant program for anybody who wanted to use it. And now it's available for purchase for districts that want to use it. And it's, like I said, it's in over half of our districts in the state. But it was written specifically for that grade 3 and grade 4 because we know that there were some districts that kind of just made local decisions around where they wanted Connecticut history to come in. So we had to be very careful about what we included too, because we didn't want to kind of move into other curriculums and other grade levels.
Well, my point is more, you mentioned having multiple perspectives.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't see that much.
Yeah.
That's why I like to, as opposed to me trying to figure out what it says, it's easier if I can read the copy.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you.
Ari.
Sorry. I had two kind of reactions to the presentation, and I just wanted to share them. I agree with Claire. She kind of stole my phrase. I mean, I think, West Hartford is often ahead of the curve, and this is just another example. But more so than that, I think that it's really just another example of how our district goes above and beyond to create robust and thorough curriculum or learning experiences for our students. I am just floored that, you're creating a curriculum like there's nothing out there. We're going to go and create our own book. Like, I'm just so impressed by that, that your passion for learning and providing students with accurate and appropriate information is such a driving force behind our curriculum. The other thing is, you know, in many other presentations, I just think West Hartford does such a great job kind of preparing our students for skills that will make them successful outside of the academic setting. I think of this curriculum as something that really helps with critical thinking. It's super interactive and engaging with students and getting them to do their own research and find their own voice. And I think more importantly, it really teaches them how to leverage separate realities, which, I mean, there are many adults who still cannot leverage separate realities. And we're doing this in 4th grade and 8th grade and high school, and really helping to teach our students perspective taking, and that one perspective is not the only way to view things, because I think that's a huge life lesson. So I want to applaud you on this curriculum and always going above and beyond and kind of putting our students first.
Thanks, Sarah. I just want to piggyback, and I want to just credit Ashley at the table here, and I know a team of people that she's worked with, but she named some of them in the writing of that Connecticut book, in the writing of the First Encounters, in the partnership with Morning Deer and the oral history, with the partnership with, I think it was parent volunteers who identified Indigenous people and other individuals, people of color, and Connecticut names in the People Who Make a Difference unit. In what grade is that? Grade 2. Because the materials, you know, we have big goals, and the state provides us guidance, but in all reality, those materials don't necessarily exist at a grade level and reading levels that are appropriate, and so a lot of thoughtful work goes into developing those, and it extends up to the high school. We have teams of teachers that have done great work to really try to unpack and provide not only the history of our United States, but the perspective taking and grapple with the complex issues as students get older and it's more developmentally appropriate. So, thank you.
Claire.
I'd just like to add to it, it's the right thing to do for a culture that has not always felt recognized, and I grew up in northern Michigan, and many of my classmates were Native Americans. I don't meet as many here, but as a people, it means a lot that we're learning about their culture, their background, and understanding a deeper part of their history.
Other questions or comments? Jason.
Yeah, so I've been meditating on, you know, the purpose and the impact that I think we hope this curriculum has for our youth and for our community, for the state. And two of the most pervasive stereotypes of Native Americans that I see circulating in Connecticut are the disappearing Indian, that they're all gone, and another stereotype related to the casinos, the greedy Indian. Now these two seem, you know, that they can't operate together, but they do in a way. That Indians are absent from contemporary life, but yet they do appear in some of our largest cultural institutions in the state. So the tribes are independent nations that live within the state of Connecticut, and so to me, you know, I wonder, in what ways would you say the curriculum helps to dispel those two stereotypes?
I don't know about those two stereotypes specifically, but the unit that I spoke about earlier in terms of westward expansion talks about perhaps more traditional stereotypes associated, with that westward expansion era. And I hope, I suppose, that by exploring stereotypes and then making that modern connection in that unit to how stereotypes perhaps have, to what degree they have persisted in the form of mascots, will allow students to develop the critical thinking skills necessary to confront stereotypes more locally. And perhaps that's a point of growth for us to consider, and perhaps new state standards might inform some of those next steps in terms of bringing that. I think we do a good job with the local piece, but the more modern local piece is very interesting. But hopefully we're developing students' capacity to transfer those critical thinking skills in terms of how they navigate the world around them.
You mentioned the concept of the disappearing Indian, and we wanted to make sure that when we were writing this early encounters book that was something that I had in mind. We wanted to make sure that when we were writing the pieces about the different tribes that encountered the Europeans, we made sure that it provided a history of what that encounter looked like, what the effect was, but it also provided an overview of what that tribe looks like today. So that was, I really wanted to make sure that students didn't just think of these tribes as people of the past, that there are ancestors of those people living here today. So that's very important. I mean, there are, as I said, there are some tribes that we had to say they're culturally extinct. That doesn't mean that there aren't ancestors, but their culture and traditions aren't necessarily being passed on today. So there are examples of that in our book. We did feel that was very, very important, not to just talk about them as if they were in the past.
Yeah, thank you. Because I think being able to link the history to the contemporary life, the place names that they see on the highway, if they go to a Connecticut Sun game like I do to the casino, that there's an understanding of where those land relationships came from, and that the presence of the casino is a result of their restriction to the reservation, right? So I think these are interrelated lessons that are they're interdisciplinary, from economics to history and politics and civic engagement, that cut across the curriculum. So I think it's a fantastic pursuit. And the one thing I'll just add as a recommendation is it would be interesting to see what ways Pacific Islanders could also be incorporated, not to replace any of the local Native Americans, but as a sort of expansion of the notion of Native American to include Pacific Islanders that are a part of U.S. history and share some of those same experiences of westward expansion across the Pacific. So, thank you.
Oh, no, I was just going to ask any other questions or comments, but...
If I can go.
Yes.
I was just thinking about the prior conversation, and you mentioned the religious freedom is grade 5, I think. Is it possible to see a copy of that? I'd be very interested, because I was also interested, I didn't realize you guys came from Native American, but if you put it in the context of the times, the political freedoms that were developed and the religious, I'd be interested to see that. I'm not sure what grade the political freedoms.
Yeah, I can get you a copy of the books that we use as anchor text for that. So students kind of engage in a protocol where they're linked up with a specific state, and then they explore that state and kind of the history of how the state was formed. And then they kind of jigsaw it out afterwards and kind of learn from one another. But I can definitely get you a copy of those books so you can see them.
Yeah, just because political freedom is the Constitution, Charter in the state. And I just think it's important to have Native Americans, but it's also important to have the context of those who came here.
absolutely, I can get those for you.
All right, I'm sold. So I don't know if there's anything in high school, but I'd be interested in that too.
We actually pick up in 8th grade in U.S. history, right where 5th grade would have left off. And so the first unit in U.S. history, as I mentioned, is really that focus on developing skills of a historian, looking at the indigenous peoples.
Whatever seems
But
relevant.
then they follow it up with the colonial era and exploration of the 13 colonies, with a focus, obviously, on the political and religious foundations of those colonies and how distinct they were from each other. And so I'm happy to give you a copy of that unit map.
If you could,
as well.
that'd be great, just to get the
of course.
context. Then I gotta find the time to read, but that's fine.
It won't be 90 pages.
No, that's good. The 90 pages were fast.
Other questions or comments? All right. Well, I too want to thank you very much for the information that was shared, but more importantly, I thank you for practicing and making the information that was shared actionable. I very much also respect and appreciate the level of authenticity that has been taken in creating this curriculum, one that has been underway dating back to 2015. So this was not an overnight procedure or process. And so thank you for honoring that. Thank you for maintaining integrity and authentic education providing to our young people. And we know that many times when it comes to educating our young people, and you made reference to books, and there were some books you couldn't find. And we know by history that happens all too often for many marginalized groups and communities where there are no stories telling their story. And some it's happened chance, and some it's intentional. But for you, not only looking for the curriculum, but wanting to make sure the authors represent those who are talking about what's being talked about is so important, because we know that many times when speaking and telling of someone else's culture or history, it's important to be mindful who is telling that story, because the story is not always accurate, and we certainly don't want to rewrite what took place in the past. So thank you for maintaining that sense of integrity with that, and maintaining that voice and allowing those people, all people, to be a part of sharing their story and their culture. And I say that as a proud member of this Board of Education, and I say that also taking that hat off as a person of color who also strives to have our voice heard in many avenues and ways. So thank you for advocating and supporting in that regard. And I want to say, I think it was intentional that the monitor was not working properly, because you speak about the importance of oral history, things being told verbally, and we were able to attune to what you were saying and sharing. So let's say that this was something that was intentional, or someone helped to make it intentional. Thank you so much again, and we look forward to continued work happening. Thank you. As we continue on, we will move on to routine matters and approval of the minutes. We are seeking a motion that the Board of Education approve the minutes of the regular Board of Education meeting on November the 1st, 2022.
So moved.
Thank you, Ari. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ethan. Any discussion? All of those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, the ayes have it. Thank you. Moving on now to board members' communications and reports. Do we have any reports or updates from board members on other organizations? No. Any other information or discussions? No. Before reading into future business, I do just want to certainly acknowledge this is our last meeting before November concludes, which means Thanksgiving is next week, and want to encourage all of us to remember the reason for the season, and that certainly includes Thanksgiving. And we don't want to reserve Thanksgiving as the only time to say thanks or be thankful. So I want to thank each and every one of you for your commitment in being a part of this Board of Education. We know this is a volunteer position, but respect and appreciate the time that you put into this effort. Certainly all worthwhile for the young people and the families that we serve. So thank you. And that includes our student representatives as well. So thank you so much. Moving on now to future business, announcements of meeting dates. Our next Board of Education meeting will be Tuesday, December the 6th, 2022 at 7 p.m. right here at the Town Hall in room 314, followed by Tuesday, December the 20th, 2022 at 7 p.m. right here in the Town Hall. Do we have a request for any future agenda items? Hearing none, do we have any visitors here that would like to make a comment? Seeing none, we do not have an executive session, so at this time, seeking a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Thank you, Jason. Is there a second?
Second?
Thank you, Claire. Meeting adjourned at 8:37.